welcome and very uplifting in a way. There's so many people were responding. It was really nice. But Sheila, she's a writer of novels, the historical novels, isn't that right? Yeah, she's nodding at me, so that's okay. But I was just intrigued, Sheila, reading about you that as a little girl you'd wandered through fields down around Wexford where you lived, with a little Jack Russell, was it? Yeah, and I thought, what a lovely image. So she'd be going along, la 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 la, and then I'm thinking, in her home, it said that she had a lot of stories, legends, Irish, things like that, and sort of developed your own little world of imagination, which probably helped you to develop what you call the cornucopia of memories that you carry with you. And I hope that tonight and the experience being here this weekend will be another one, but you can tell people about the workshop as well when you come up. Is that all right? Okay. But also, I love the way you sort of fell in love with history and linking it up into stories. So you give us as readers a visual and a textured insight into Ireland's past. Lovely. She's looking at me now thinking, you're the Irish Times, on the best Irish Times bestsellers list. That's lovely. You've written Mending Lace, which is a fascinating, intriguing title. I'd be reading it to find out, what it's about. And then there's Kilbride House. There's a lot of houses in here. So Kilbride House is another one. Is that a mystery?
Yeah.
Oh, good, yeah. And then you've got The Secret of Eveline House. So that's obviously a mystery, which sounds good as well. And then The Lake House of Lenashee. Yeah. Brilliant. So I'll welcome you up now, Sheila, to announce the winner and I think
that's the part. Okay. Oh no, it's embarrassing. I'll leave them there. Nice to be. First of all, huge thank you to Angela, who sent me my first email from Edgeworth Festival. And since then, it's been a journey of absolute privilege. I feel very humbled and not at all, I suppose, what was the word I am looking for? I feel humbled, I think, to be allowed to judge this short story competition. And it has been a wonderful thing. And I really thank the committee. I've worked on committees before in literary festivals, and I know the hard work that goes into it. So just a huge, massive thank you for all your correspondence and everything, and the warmth and the welcome that I have received. Thank you so much to all of you. I arrived here the other night, late into the night, took a bit of a detour on the motorway. And it's funny, I was thinking about it today because we were doing the short story workshop and we were talking about, transporting the reader into the story. And I feel since the other night, I have been transported into, like Alice in Wonderland, into another place. And that is the world of Maria Edgeworth, who I feel the passion is here that is so strong and is so tangible. And I am very much now in love with this writer so much, and it's because of all your work in bringing it to life. It's just an amazing achievement. I also did the Heritage Walk, which I would so highly recommend to you, with the wonderful Matt, who is also a heritage hero, and with the Heritage Council, and it was just fantastic and fabulous, and I haven't enjoyed anything so much in a long time. So thank you so much, Matt, for that. Just you mentioned houses. Yes, houses are a thing with me, and it's from since I was a child. I really don't know what it is. I've never particularly looked into it, but I do have a sense, and I don't know what it is. Maybe it's an overdeveloped sense that when I go in somewhere into a house, that I get a sense of something. And it has led me to all sorts of places that I wanted to go and not wanted to go. But it has very much influenced all my writing. And I have to say, when I went into the museum yesterday morning, I definitely got a sense. And it was a beautiful sense, an absolute welcome of a sense. So, and again, I think it's the warmth that you brought to the festival and also in highlighting this amazing writer. Coming to the short stories, what I'm here for. It was such a privilege, it really, really was. And I was reading deep into the night at times. I had a criteria, the usual criteria that you would use for a short story competition. And then there's always something else. There's something that you can't really understand, what draws you, what absolutely stops you in its tracks, what makes you cry, what makes you laugh, and what steals your heart. And that was definitely part of the results as well. So the results, how many glasses I have. And it was a very diverse group of writing that actually did. So in the highly commended, we have Sound Hope. No, sorry, we have in third place. I will actually go to the highly commended first. Sorry, it's just the way I have it written here. Paul Carrio. Is it? Yeah. In Lee Dormant Treasures, Meditations in Your Father's Garden. And then we have in the highly commended as well, we have Steve Wade, The Redeemer. Yeah. And Zita McGarry in The Wealthy Bachelor. And in third place in the short story competition, we have, in third place, we read this correctly, it's Sam Pope with Free Loved. In second place, Ciara Quinn with Metamorphosis. And in first place, Monica McGuinn with One Small Step. And as Victoria has said earlier, I suppose judging is a difficult word to use because it is very subjective. There is a skill of language in all of these short stories that is certainly absolutely jumps out. And I have the privilege to actually read the Monica McGuinn One Small Step, as she's not here tonight. And this was a story. Oh, she is. Oh, brilliant. I was told a minute ago she wasn't. Oh, that's fantastic. Oh, brilliant. So Monica is here. Oh, Monica, I'm so thrilled. That's fantastic. Monica, your story absolutely stole my heart. And I welcome you to the stage to read it for us. Thank you.
One Small Step. It was a hard-won climb, the attic stairs steep and twisting. Tiny tumbleweeds of soft dust and debris gathered in every corner. It was a seldom visited place now. Daphne paused, waiting, catching her breath, and listening to the steady beat of her labouring heart. She stood, motionless, holding on to the curved handrail, solid and secure beneath her fingers. Then she took a breath and pulled herself upwards. She could hear him, a few steps below, his breathing slow and measured. She'd wanted to walk behind, thinking he would possibly push him upwards if the going got too much. But he was one step ahead of her, as always. And what if I fall? What then? He wheezed, his grey eyes lost among the smiling wrinkles. Humpty Dumpty time then, isn't it? Or maybe even Jack and Jill. No brown paper would patch us up though. Daphne had opened her mouth to protest, to say that might be for the best, but remained quiet. He was right, of course. She could picture them both falling, tumbling down and down, a mess of arms and legs, like something from a comic book, except there would be no fixing, not for them. She shrugged instead, agreeing, and took his hand. Let's go then, we'll take our time. The feel of his hand had never changed, that firm but gentle pressure, covering hers. She still remembered the first time she ever held his hand, so long ago. It was dark, and there'd been quite the crowd that night, gathered together to watch the eclipse. Some more serious than others. Carefully arranged tripods and picnic blankets strewn across the deer-cropped grass. Daphne had gone with a friend, a girl she shared a flat with. She wasn't really bothered about the eclipse, the first since the moon landing. But the weather was fine, and there was a festive summer atmosphere, carnival-like, with strangers smiling and talking to each other in excited voices. So they packed a small bag and set off for the park. She had reached the top of the stairs. The attic door was closed. I'm there now, she called back down. Good, he rasped. She knew he was on the little landing of floor below, waiting, breathless, holding on to the handrail. She pushed the door and it rolled open. The last rays of summer light were falling through the enormous shuttered window, lying in slanted bars across the dusty floor. This room was the reason they bought the house. She remembered him taking the stairs, 2 at a time, laughing and lying beneath the open window, watching as the moon travelled its ancient path above their heads, slow breaths of summer air lifting her hair and tingling their way along her arms. It had always been the heart of the house, filled with children's laughter, and then, late at night, when the house began to silt up with silence, she climbed the stairs to find him, watching the stars, dreaming of a world of light and dark, walking in slow motion across the moon. She made her way to the window, taking her time, stepping carefully in the half-light, and began to fold the shutters back. The sun poured in like molten honey, finding the dark corners, chasing the shadows away. She opened the window. She could hear the birds, robins, thrushes, blackbirds, filling the air with beauty and song. Then she heard his step, a shuffle. He was at the door. He'd made it. She smiled at him, brushing away her tears. He was the astronomer, not her. He had set up a telescope that night to watch the lunar event in the park, and as darkness fell, enveloping the people, the crowd became silent. A great hush descended, as though the world may never brighten again. She was standing, looking skyward, when she felt his gaze in the velvet black. Would you like to see? He asked, taking her hand, guiding her steps across the grass. In the attic, the telescope stood beside the open window. Daphne had found the old rocking chair and pushed it across the floor for him. She was fixing blankets and wondering if the night air would be too cold. Don't fuss, Daphne. I'm fine. We're fine, aren't we? Daphne looked away. She went back to the telescope beside the window. So, what do I do now? She asked. Have you never listened to a word? He began to laugh, and then it turned into a crackling rasp. And Daphne was by his side, checking the oxygen canister, making sure the valve was fully open. He was holding the mask against his face, trying to catch his breath, and Daphne kneeled down awkwardly, holding his hand, waiting for the spasm to pass, waiting for his broken lungs to filter air. In the attic, the light grew dim as night came on, a soft purple colour against the faded chalk white walls. Daphne checked the viewer again. She could see the moon clearly now. A vast white orb, craters, and tiny circles dotting the surface, scars and dust. She thought of his lungs and the way life changed, so quickly, without notice, without care. Have you got it in the viewfinder? He asked. Daphne nodded. What now? She said eventually. We wait, he replied. She remembered the walk home from the park the morning after, a hot, bright August morning, heavy with the promise of a scorching summer day. The dawn chorus busy, chattering in the bushes and hedgerows, her cardigan slipping from her shoulders as she walked. She was helping him by carrying the tripod. "Will I see you again?" he asked, as they came to the end of her road, and she nodded, knowing her heart was already lost to this tall man. She watched him walk away till he was just another figure amongst the strangers on the street. In the attic, the night air was filling the room with the heady scent of summer stock, and cool breezes brushed across her face. She looked at him, lying back in the rocking chair. He could be sleeping. The mask tight against his face, tiny breaths fogging up the nosepiece. It had been his idea. Just a simple notion that came to him after one of the nurses explained about the oxygen valve on the tank. "Be careful with this lever. The mix needs to be within this range. Too much oxygen," and she'd stopped talking then, aware of the silence, the only sound the dry, crackling wheeze as he struggled to breathe. "Imagine, we put a man on the moon, but we can't fix this," he said to Daphne later that night. But she knew him, and she knew the paths his mind was travelling alone. She argued at first, meaningless words, tears, and then the inevitable acceptance. "My turn, Daphne, my terms. Time is running low." And she knew if he waited too long, life would no longer be his to decide. The room was filling with darkness now, the moon almost fully gone, the earth's shadow creeping slow. She looked through the viewer again, with a glassy eye, her tears dropping on the tiny screen. "Watch for me in the stars," he whispered. "I will wait for you on the moon." The room was silent.
Thank you so much. That was just beautiful as I remember it. And I think for me, when I read stories, there's so many things that you could talk about, but I won't forget those characters. They're here, they're with me, and they'll always be with me. So thank you for giving us that. And thank you for everybody entered the story competition and gave us such beautiful, beautiful writing to read. I am very privileged to read to you, and I will keep it very, very short. I am haunted by houses. Someone, you mentioned haunted earlier, Elizabeth, and I very much feel haunted by the past, and certainly about houses and people and places of the past. So houses have certainly come into it for me. This is my last book that was published, and it's called The Lake House at Glenashi. So without further ado, I will read a small piece and then leave you alone. Chapter 1, Paris, 2019. It was the balm of the wild orchids that had evoked the memory, a memory of a house that had insisted on coming back, always when she was least expecting it. A house overlooking a silver lake where the events of one night in the summer of 1967 would be replayed like a kaleidoscope in the recesses of her mind for decades, haunting her nights. No amount of sleeping pills or bourbon could ever seem to still it. Every detail of the lake house was still vivid to her. The gabled lodge at the entrance of the long tree-lined avenue leading to the house, and the shimmering light that shone down the grand staircase through the stained glass dome. But the strongest memory was of the pewter mist, and how it hung like a veil over the house, making it almost dreamlike. On first sighting, she thought it was like a grand old lady, sitting in the shade of the blue mountain behind it. It was more lovely than she'd imagined. The image of the sunken lake in the grounds mirrored in the many windows. The facade of the house was of cut sandstone that glittered in the summer sun. Moss green shutters framed windows, and ivy sneaked over a semicircle of blood red glass over the door. There were many rooms in the lake house, but none so elegant as the library, with its high ceiling and glass-fronted bookcases filled with books of forgotten stories and forgotten lives. A room filled with the scent of wild orchids that grew abundantly below the library window. Lenashee was a place like no other she had ever encountered. Strange how she could recall all the details of the house all these years later. One would think, with the distance of years, that the memory of it would fade like a tattered sepia photograph of long ago, but in ways that had become stronger. So many times she had dreamed of it and awoken to find that it still had the same power over her, but she'd managed to hide it, keep it as an eternal secret, a secret that she had promised to keep. That night, the people in that house had to put their trust in each other and then allow the truth to slip through the cracks of time. Years had passed, and the events of that night had remained as silent as stone, just as they had promised. She opened a small wooden jewellery box and took out a brooch of a large spider. She picked it up and opened the pin. Her fingers were aged now, mottled and not as nimble with the onset of arthritis, but she still managed to prise the pin open. It was a rose gold brooch with a diamond-encrusted body and 2 red rubies as eyes. She'd bought it at a pawn shop in Paris 52 years before, when she had just arrived. It had cost her more than she could afford, but she was drawn to it. She had bought it as she knew the spider would be a symbol to her of what she had comprised to do before she left Ireland. Her youthful mind had innocently imagined that she would need a symbol to remind her. Her aged mind was more cynical. She had never needed a reminder that on that night, all those decades ago, she had helped to spun a web of truth and untruth, as intricate as any spider's web. Spiders' webs were instilled in her mind from an early age. She often thought of the story of the spider that she had heard as a child from her teacher in that dark schoolroom of long ago that smelled of dust and rancid milk bottles. It was a story from the Bible, but her teacher, Miss Kennedy, had put her own spin on it. In her mind's eye, she could still see her tin body walking around the classroom asking about compositions and telling of how some famous battle involving Strongbow or Cromwell happened in Druid or a neighbouring village, ordering them to say prayers on their bended knees to protest their sinful souls against the devil, damnation, purgatory and the fires of hell, warning them not to fall from the one true path or they would surely burn for all eternity. Finally reading the day's gospel from her leather-bound missal, with its intricate gold edging on each page, with a gold ribbon to mark the page. But Miss Kennedy liked to tell one story most of all. She would take a deep breath, and with her voice pointed for dramatic effect, she would tell the story of the massacre of the innocents. Her version. In her clipped, sharp voice, she would tell how Joseph and Mary, the child Jesus, were fleeing King Herod. Herod had ordered the executions of all male children on their 2 who lived in Bethlehem. Mary and Joseph were trying to protect the child Jesus, and they hid in a cave. A spider had spun a web over the entrance to the cave to fool Herod and his soldiers into thinking that there was no one in the cave. The soldiers went on by. The web had deceived them. The child was saved. That brooch that she'd bought was a simple reminder of the web they had spun at Lenashee. She had persuaded herself over the years that, as in the story, they had also spun a web to protect the innocent. But late at night, when sleep evaded her, the enormity of this web was overpowering. Thank you so much. And could we also we have Paul Cario, in the highly commended for his beautiful story, absolutely beautiful story. Thank you so much.
So Sheila, thank you very much. That was great. I'm very intrigued. Now I'm going to have to, read on. So thanks very much. That was lovely. And we're going to have another piece of music. I think it's 2 pieces you're going to do. Yeah, Lucy, she's just getting herself ready here. So she's going to do 2 pieces of music for us on her harp. So Lucy, do you have titles for your pieces?
I do. So the first was called Quinlock Glass on Ower, and the second one is called Peary Joel's Drums.
Right, and is one Irish and one Italian or something?
Irish and then one Scottish.
Scottish, okay. So there you are. Are they lively tunes?
Very gentle tune.
Right, yes, okay. Right, so here we have Lucy Sky again to give you some music. The